Welcome back to Survive and Thrive. I'm Nathan Hurd, Chief Growth Officer with the Oxford Club. And today, we're going to talk about something that is connected to the last few episodes, but put a finer point on something so fundamental to the way you make decisions, to the way you feel, to the way you make other people feel all throughout your life. And that is, depending on the time, the place, the circumstance, do you tend to view things as the glass is half full or the glass is half empty? Do you tend to be more optimistic or pessimistic? Now, for most of us, this will vary depending on the questions being asked, the circumstances, the situations we're looking at, but this is very much worth your time. I mean, truly understanding what causes optimism and pessimism, what influences it, and how it can help or harm our ability to enjoy our lives and make good decisions is so critical and so worth our time and attention. And so in the next few episodes, I'm going to break this down and really help to we'll all think about what this really means for us. Let's first start by defining what we're really talking about here. What is optimism? What is pessimism? Well, optimism, by definition, is the tendency to expect the best possible outcome or dwell on the most hopeful aspects of a situation. Now, real optimists don't believe everything will be great. I mean, that's complacency, honestly. But they believe the odds of a good outcome over time are in their favor, even when there will be setbacks. You know, the general idea that you wake up trying to make things a little better versus causing, trouble. In our world, optimism has a stigma, doesn't it? Optimists, if you're overly optimistic, people look at you like you're crazy. At the very least, they can think you are naive, right? If you were to say the world has gotten better, you may be called insensitive. If you say it will continue to get better, most people will look at you like you're crazy, like you are foolish, like you're not really assessing everything that's happening. But what about pessimism? The close cousin of optimism, the sibling even. Pessimism, by definition, is a tendency to stress the negative or unfavorable or to take the gloomiest possible view. Sounds bleak, but it can be incredibly useful. Pessimism holds a special place in our hearts, doesn't it? It's more common than optimism, for one. It sounds smarter and it's more intellectually captivating. Pessimism is paid more attention to than optimism. Take the news. Is it more pessimistic or optimistic? A darker lens or a lighter lens? But it's optimism, again, can be viewed more as being oblivious to the risks that exist or that are present. Now, when it comes to money, the reason why pessimism, I think, has such a grip on our minds when we think about investing specifically is because, unlike other things, money is ubiquitous, meaning it affects everybody at every level, right? If the market drops, even for people that aren't invested, they take that as a sign as there's a threat against their financial well-being. If you look at the news coverage or the attention paid to the media and to the stories during the Great Depression, even though only a very small percentage of investors were invested in the market, most of the population took this as a huge warning sign to their own personal wealth. And the same is true today, even though many more are invested. This is different than a hurricane that's about to hit the coast somewhere that affects a group of people. Money affects all of us, right? But especially with investing, but with a lot of things, progress happens over time, events compounding on one another. It usually doesn't happen in an instant or all at once. But destruction can be driven by single points of failure, particularly in the markets, right? When crashes occur, and can happen very quickly. For this reason, and in general, it's easier to build a pessimistic narrative because the factors tend to be fresher and more recent. Optimism requires looking at longer stretches of history, typically, and developments, and piecing events together, which requires more cognitive lifting. Or think about the fact that, reputation nowadays can take a lifetime to build, just like trust. And it can be broken or destroyed in an instant. So, having said all this, studies show that those who are more pessimistic generally about the future tend to have the least basic knowledge on how the world has changed. In the last few episodes, I've given you some data to think about regarding global poverty and some of the progress that's occurred that most people are unaware of. There was a study done that asked people to evaluate their local communities. This was back in 2001. Asked people all around the world in many different countries to evaluate their local communities, their nation, and the world as being negative, neutral, or good. And their general views about it. And people, interestingly enough, tend to have more optimistic views about things that are closer to them, that they understand more. So the general trend in the US was only 30% of people viewed their local communities negatively, but 45% viewed their nation in a negative light, and almost 70% viewed the world as being generally negative and heading in a bad direction. This is worth your time and attention. I'm going to post a link right here, you should see it, of a test. It's a very simple test. I encourage you to take it. It will help you to determine where you generally fall. I'll tell you, I took it and I was a little bit surprised by the results, to be honest. And it'll give you a sense of how optimistic or pessimistic you tend to be. A lot of factors can influence that, but it's worth understanding where your baseline is. In the coming weeks, we'll discuss what this really means, where this comes from, and how we can use this to better understand the influences that this has on our perspective and on our lives and on our ability to be happy and successful moving forward, despite any circumstances. And that's why we're really here in this series. Until then, I wish you well. Thank you so much for tuning in. Leave me a note here on your thoughts. I'd love to hear from you. This has been Survive and Thrive. Thank you.